The stars above Sector 14 were cold and quiet, just floating rocks, dust clouds, and forgotten signals bounced between moons no one cared about. But today, something loud tore across the silence. A small human cargo ship rusted, dented, and shaking burst through a cloud of ice, flames trailing from its side. Inside, Eli Ward, a 29-year-old engineer with tired eyes and greasy hands, fought to steady the controls. "Come on, not now," he whispered, hitting the dashboard. Sparks flew. The ship shook hard. He was losing power. One wing had taken a hit from a passing asteroid, and now the fuel systems were failing. The screen blinked red. Critical failure crash imminent. Of course, Eli muttered. Just a simple supply run, they said. Nothing dangerous. Through the window, he saw the surface of a small moon rising fast dry, cracked, and completely lifeless. No cities. No signals. Just gray dirt and rocky hills. With no choice left, Eli braced himself. The ship slammed into the ground. When Eli woke up, everything was quiet again. His ship was half buried in dust. Alarms blinked, but the fire was out. He coughed as he sat up, his shoulder aching. No broken bones. Lucky me, he said. He grabbed his small toolkit, a flare gun, and a flask of water. Crawling out of the twisted door, he stepped onto the moon's surface. It was strange. The place felt empty, but also watched. There was no wind, no sound, but Eli felt like eyes were on him. He walked around the crash site, looking for damage, and hoping his emergency signal had gone out. Then he saw something odd. A pile of smooth stones arranged in a perfect circle. Beside it, tiny footprints in the dust. Too small for any animal, too perfect to be a mistake. What the? Eli knelt and touched the stones. That's when he heard it. A tiny sound, like a whistle or a whisper, high-pitched, soft. He turned. Quickly, nothing. He stood up and looked around. Again, a whisper, closer now. Then, movement just under a large rock. Cautiously, Eli walked toward it. He crouched and slowly lifted the rock. What he saw made him blink twice. A small creature not more than 6 inches tall stared back at him. It had smooth, glowing skin, bright yellow eyes, and delicate arms that held a tiny stick like a weapon. Its body shimmered like soft glass, and its feet had little metal shoes. It was clearly intelligent and clearly afraid. Eli whispered, "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you." The creature didn't move, but behind it, 2 more peered out, tiny, aliens. Living right under his crash site. Holy stars, Eli breathed. Suddenly, a loud boom shook the ground. Dirt flew as a giant metal foot slammed down behind him. A robotic drone military grade had detected movement. Eli turned fast and grabbed his flare gun. "Oh, come on, not now." The robot scanned the area. Its voice boomed, unidentified. Life form detected. Cleanse protocol activated. It raised its cannon. Eli knew what was coming. It wasn't here for him. It was here to wipe out the tiny creatures. Maybe it thought they were pests. Maybe this moon was marked for testing. But Eli couldn't let it happen. He jumped in front of the rock, arms wide. "They're alive. Stop. They're sentient." The robot did not care. Its cannon hummed to life. Eli dove, grabbed a rock, and threw it at the sensor. The cannon fired but missed, hitting the ground beside him and sending up smoke. He rolled, aimed his flare gun, and fired at the drone's eye. The flare burst, blinding it. Sparks flew. The robot glitched. Eli grabbed a metal rod from the ground and ran at it, smashing its leg joint. It shook and stumbled. The robot, confused by both the flare and damage, backed away slowly, then exploded in the distance with a deep, echoing boom. Silence returned. Eli stood, panting, dust covering his face and hands. Behind him, the rock moved. Again, dozens of tiny eyes peered out. Little heads appeared, some with tiny helmets, some holding tools made from scrap metal and bone. They all stared at him. Then, the first little alien, the one he saw, stepped forward. It looked up at him. Its eyes were wide. It dropped the stick and raised one tiny hand. Eli, surprised, gently held out his finger. The creature touched it. For a moment, nothing was said, just breath, just silence. Then the little alien spoke one word, soft and clear, "Protector." Eli blinked. His heart pounded. Whatever he thought this moon was, it wasn't empty anymore. It was home to something fragile. Something worth defending. And now, they knew his name. Eli sat on a rock near the broken wing of his ship, breathing slowly. The heat was rising now. even though the sun on this moon was small and far away in the distance. Smoke from the destroyed drone still curled into the sky like a warning. He didn't understand everything, but he understood one thing. He had just become something more than a lost engineer. He had become a defender. Tiny footsteps tapped the dirt behind him. When he turned, he saw them again, the Minari. As they later told him they were called. Over 30 of them now. Some wore leaf-like cloaks. Others had little backpacks made of plant fibers. One held a spoon as a weapon. But the one who stepped forward looked older. His skin was rougher, and his glowing yellow eyes were dimmer. A circle of beads hung from his shoulders. This was their chief. The elder spoke slowly, his voice like wind through dry leaves. You were the first tall one. Who did not kill? Eli blinked. There were others before me. The chief nodded, sadness in his face. Many hunters, explorers. They walked over us like shadows. Some poisoned our caves, others laughed. A small Minari child ran forward, pointing at Eli. He fought the metal beast. I saw it. Fire in his hand, Eli chuckled and held up the flare gun. This old thing, yeah, did the trick. The elder raised his hand, silencing the whispers. Come with us, tall brother. Eli hesitated. Tall brother, you protected the small. The elder said, so now we welcome you to walk beneath. They led him to the edge of a crater, no bigger than a swimming pool. A flat stone slid aside, revealing a long tunnel. The entrance was barely big enough for Ellie's chest to pass through. He had to crawl, but inside, once his eyes adjusted, he saw a whole different world. Glowing moss grew on the walls, painting everything with a soft green-blue light. Tiny crystal streams ran under the pots. Little homes carved into the rock sparkled like sugar. Above, he could see long ropes hanging like vines with knots climbing tools. Children swung from one to another. Families gathered around small fires made of heat stone. They laughed, they sang, they shared food. Ellie's heart tightened. This was real, alive, and completely hidden from the rest of the galaxy. A woman barely 6 inches tall walked up to him, holding a soft cloth. She touched his arm gently where the drone had burned him. The cloth glowed faintly. Pain slowly faded. Eli stared. What is that? The elder smiled. Healing moss. Passed from stars above to roots below. Eli looked around. You've built all this under the ground. We had to, the elder said. The sky brings fire. Eli clenched his jaw. I'm sorry. The elder nodded. You are not them. You are different. As they walked deeper, the elder explained. Generations ago, the Minari had made contact with early explorers. At first, there was peace, but then curiosity turned to fear. Fear turned to violence. The Minari were too small, too strange, too insignificant. So they hid. They adapted. They became invisible. Until today. Until Eli died later that night. Eli sat on a smooth rock, eating dried fruit offered by the children. It tasted like honey and lemon. He hadn't smiled this much in months, but the joy was short-lived. A bell rang soft, but sharp. The Minari froze. Another drone. Eli stood. No, said the elder, his voice grave. Worse. He led Eli to a communication pit. A broken screen buzzed. It had been left by a human technician years ago. Somehow, the Minari had repaired. The screen showed a red alert from Earth Command. Subject Eli Ward Mia. Believed compromised. Armed and dangerous. If sighted, capture immediately. A second message flashed. Sector 14 flagged. Alien activity suspected. Engaged with full clearance. Eli felt his stomach drop. They think I've gone rogue. The elder looked at him. You must leave. Your kind will burn us again. Eli stood still. He looked around at the children watching him from behind crystal pillars, at the mothers who had offered him food, and at the injured man whose leg he had helped bandage. No, Eli said, I'm not leaving you. Not when they're coming. The elder stepped close. Then you will fight for more than your life. You will fight for ours. Eli looked down at his hands, calloused and scarred from years of ship work. He had no army, no ship, no fancy weapons. But he had something stronger. He had a reason. That night, Eli walked to the top of the crater with a small team of Minari. They gave him a small armor plate to wear, one that barely covered his chest, but was carved with their symbol, a tiny hand holding a flame. Aya, the tiny healer, approached and held out a necklace made of tiny stone beads. For courage, she whispered. He smiled and tied it to his wrist. The elder spoke one last time. You were lost, tall brother, but the small found you. Eli nodded. Then let's show them the size. Doesn't matter. The Minari raised their tiny fists. The battle for the smallest had just begun. The next morning, Sector 14 was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't peaceful. It was a calm before something dangerous. Eli stood outside the tunnel entrance, watching the sky. He had barely slept. All night, he had helped the Minari prepare setting. Traps, reinforcing tunnel entrances, building noise jammers out of broken ship parts. The Minari might have been small, but they were clever and fast. And now, united with him, they were fearless. But as the red glow of distant engines appeared in the sky, Ellie's heart sank. To human bounty ships. Not soldiers, not drones. Hunters. Inside the tunnels. The Minari elders gathered quickly. The youngest ones were hidden in deeper caves. The stronger ones, those who had once mined metals from the core, now stood ready with slingshots, crystal spears, and tiny explosives made from mushroom powder. Eli returned from the surface. His face was covered in dust, his shirt torn, his hands blistered from working with hot wires. They've landed, he said. The chief nodded. Do they come to talk? Eli shook his head. They don't talk. They take. The room fell silent. The elder stepped forward again. That we must give you something before the storm begins. He raised his hand, and a circle of Minari stepped aside. From behind them, a small platform rose. It was made of layered stone and crystal, like a glowing flower, and standing on it was her, the woman from earlier, the one who had healed Ellie's wounds. She wore a soft white cloak made of moon petals, and a thin silver line curved gently across her forehead. Her hair, made of fine golden threads, swayed as she stepped forward. She was no longer just a healer. She was the chosen one. This is Aya, the elder said, daughter of the deep roots, teacher of lights. She has chosen you. Eli looked confused. Chosen me? For what? Aya walked forward, her eyes calm. To be my bonded. Eli blinked. Wait, what? The elder nodded. You defended our people. You risked your life with no reward. You have earned the right to be joined. Eli glanced around. Are you saying she's my wife now? I looked up at him. If you accept. Eli opened his mouth, then closed it. His thoughts were spinning. A wife? She was 6 inches tall. This couldn't be real. I don't even know her. He said quietly, you fought for us before knowing our names. I replied softly. That is the greatest bond of all. Eli looked into her eyes. There was no fear, no pressure, just calm trust. She stepped forward, gently placed one hand on his finger, and smiled. It wasn't about romance. Not yet. It was about trust. About unity. But just as the moment began to settle, a sharp boom shook the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling. A voice shouted from above. Eli Ward, come out or we level this place. Eli ran to the surface, flares in his belt, and a knife on his side. The bounty hunter stood near his wrecked ship, guns drawn. One of them, a woman with a robotic arm, stepped forward. You're making things worse, Eli, she shouted. We've got orders. Bring you back. No questions. Eli raised his hands. I'm not going back. You really want to die for a bunch of bugs? They're not bugs. They're people, Eli replied. The male bounty hunter laughed. People don't fit in your hand, Ward. But behind Eli, I climbed quietly onto his shoulder. She pressed a tiny button on her wrist. A burst of smoke exploded near the hunters, and from the ground, small crystal bombs launched upward Minari defense. Tech.1 hit the man's boots, throwing him backward. The woman shouted, aiming her blaster. Eli Dove rolled and threw a flare at her chest. It burst in blinding light. She screamed and fired blindly, hitting the sky. I had jumped from Ellie's shoulder to the hunter's helmet, pressing a sharp needle into a sensitive nerve cluster. The woman collapsed. Eli caught Aya midair as she fell. He stared at her, stunned. Where'd you learn that? Aya smirked. Our size makes us invisible, so we learned to fight, unseen. When it was over, the bounty hunters were tied beside the wrecked ship. The Minari surrounded them, some angry, some fearful. Do we punish them? A young warrior asked. Eli looked at Aya. She shook her head. No, Eli said. Let them go, but send them back with a message. What message? Asked the elder. Eli looked at the sky. Tell Earth that the small are not weak, and I am not alone. That night, under the glowing roots of the Minari trees, Eli sat with Aya beside a small fire made from warm stones. She curled in his palm, like a soft breeze, looking up at the stars. You really chose me? He asked again. Aya smiled. Not because you're strong, not because you're tall, but because you saw us when no one else did. Eli didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, her hand on his skin, her eyes steady and sure he knew he would stay. Not because she was his reward, but because she was the reason he had become more than just a man. He had become the warrior of the small. The days after the attack felt like a quiet before a storm. The smoke had cleared, but Eli knew it wasn't over. He could feel that something bigger was coming. Earth Command wouldn't accept failure. The bounty hunters had been humiliated. Word would spread. Sector 14 wasn't just a dead moon anymore. It was now a question mark, a threat, and Earth hated threats. Eli spent his time helping the Minari build stronger defenses. He taught them how to wire motion sensors from his ship's broken circuits. In return, they taught him how to move silently underground, how to hear the difference between Earth shifting and an enemy approaching. Aya stayed close to him, sometimes sitting on his shoulder, sometimes working beside him with tools the size of paper clips. Though she was small, her mind was sharp. She understood patterns, numbers, and energy like a master engineer. She even modified the flare gun, turned it into a mini pulse blaster with adjustable strength. You're full of surprises, Eli told her. Aya gave him a sideways smile. You haven't seen anything yet. But that night, something changed. A distant tremor rolled through the ground. Then another. The air smelled burnt. The Minari elders gathered at the chamber entrance. Something comes, said the chief, his face tense. But this is no hunter, no drone. They all rushed to the surface. In the sky, cutting through the stars like a blade, flew a Recon-class warpod, a human ship not used for bounty missions, but for destruction. It hovered for a moment above the moon, then dropped a large black device into the crater. It landed with a hard thud. Ellie's eyes widened. EMP mine. The device began pulsing. With each beat, a wave of blue light spread out, killing every machine it touched. Ellie's flare blaster sputtered and died. The defense towers short-circuited. Even the moss lights inside the Minari tunnels flickered out. I gasped. Our systems, all down. A voice boomed from a speaker above the mine. You are harboring a Class B fugitive. Relinquish him and surrender any undocumented alien life forms immediately. Eli stared at Aya. We're being erased. He didn't have time to think. A squad of mechanical units dropped from the hovering warpod. They weren't drones. They were shell soldiers, empty suits guided by AI, programmed to crush resistance with no emotion. The Minari panicked. The children screamed. The warriors scattered. Eli ran toward the mine to disable it, but was knocked down by a blast from a shell gun. Blood trickled down his forehead. One shell unit pointed its cannon at the tunnel entrance. The Minari were trapped. Inside. One more second and zoom. A blur of gold and silver shot across the battlefield. Aya. She darted across the rocks, using her small size as a weapon. She leapt onto one of the shells and jammed her mini pulse stick into a weak joint. Sparks exploded, and the unit dropped to one knee. Then, from her wrist device, she launched 3 micro-drones shaped like fireflies. They buzzed into the next shell unit's helmet and exploded with blinding light. The AI circuits inside Glitched. The unit spun in confusion, then fired wildly into the air. Eli, struggling to get up, watched in shock. Aya wasn't just smart. She was deadly, but her luck was running thin. One shell unit spotted her mid-jump and swiped at her with a huge armored hand. She crashed into a rock and rolled. A tiny crack formed in her arm shield. She gasped in pain. Trying to stand, Eli yelled, charging forward. He jumped on the shell unit, using a piece of scrap metal as a blade. He slammed it into the unit's neck joint, severing the power cord. The unit collapsed. Eli rushed to Aya and gently picked her up in both hands. Her eyes were dazed, her voice faint. I'm okay, she whispered. No, you're not, Eli said, voice shaking. She smiled weakly. Did you see that flip? Eli laughed through his tears. Yeah, I saw. They ran back toward the entrance, where the remaining Minari were preparing for a final stand. Eli set Aya down and picked up a plasma coil, just one small blast left inside. He turned to the Minari. We take down that mine. Once it's gone, we can reboot your systems. Aya pushed herself up. There's another way. She climbed onto a ledge and, using the last spark of power in her wristband, tapped into the warpod's main signal tower. I've uploaded a feedback virus, she said. The shell units froze. Then boom, they started short-circuiting, one by one, falling like dominoes. Eli turned to her. Stunned. You hacked their command system. I collapsed into his palm, smiling. I told you, you haven't seen anything yet. By the end of the hour, the field was quiet. The EMP mine sparked, failed, and died. The Minari tunnels lit up again. The children emerged, blinking. The elders knelt. The warriors cheered, but Eli knelt beside Aya, who was wrapped now in a warm moss blanket. The chief stepped beside him and bowed. She defended us when even we could not. Eli looked down at her. No, he whispered. She saved us all. And in that moment, under the light of a cracked moon and the glow of moss fire, Aya was no longer just his partner. She had become something much greater, a legend. Deep beneath Sector 14, below the soft glowing moss and ancient stone homes, there was a secret no outsider had ever seen, a secret even most Minari didn't know. Only the elders, the oldest and wisest, knew the truth. It wasn't just the Minari that made this moon special. It was what lived beneath. Eli sat quietly beside Aya's healing pod, his head lowered, his mind full of questions. She had saved everyone, and now she lay in a deep sleep, wrapped in warm crystals, her tiny chest rising and falling slowly. Her armor was cracked, her energy band completely burned out. Still, she had smiled before falling unconscious. You haven't seen anything. Yet, she had whispered one last time. Eli didn't want to leave her side, but he had to. The chief had requested him. There was something he needed to see. They walked through winding tunnels, far deeper than Eli had ever gone. The walls here were dark and wet, glowing with red veins pulsing like blood. The ground was warm beneath his boots. What is this place? He asked. The chief answered. The root core. It is the heart of this moon, the place we were sworn to protect long before the stars called your kind to fly. As they entered a vast cavern, Eli gasped. A glowing sphere floated above a ring of carved stone. It wasn't made of metal or rock. It looked alive, breathing slowly like a sleeping giant. It gave off soft music, low and gentle, like the hum of a mother singing a lullaby. This is why they're coming, the chief said. Not for you, not for us, but for this. Eli stepped closer. What is it? It is called the Urium core, a living energy, older than planets. It feeds the moon and protects our kind. If removed, the planet dies. Eli blinked. Wait, is this what the drone was scanning? What the bounty hunters were after? The chief nodded. Your people think it's a weapon. They do not understand it as a soul. Suddenly, a deep crack echoed through the cavern. The ground shook. From behind a wall of stone, 3 figures emerged, humans, armed with gravity boots and mining rifles. One of them had a red helmet with a black X on it. Found it, the leader said. Told you he'd lead us right to it. Eli spun around. You followed us. The man smirked. We were paid to collect a power source. Didn't expect a living alien battery, but hey, bonus points. He raised his rifle and aimed it at the Urium core. The Minari screamed. Eli lunged forward, knocking the weapon aside. It fired into the wall, causing rubble to fall. The air filled with dust and panic. You don't understand. Eli shouted. If you touch that thing, this whole place will collapse. The man didn't care. That's not my problem. I get paid either way. The cavern shook again, stronger this time. The Urium core pulsed red. The chief grabbed Ellie's arm. We must stop them before it awakens fully. What happens if it wakes up? Eli asked. The chief's voice was grave. If disturbed too much, it becomes defense. And defense becomes destruction. Eli looked around. No weapons. No time. No backup. Then he heard a voice in his earpiece. Faint, weak, but clear. Don't forget. You still haven't seen everything. It was AYA. His heart raced. Eli pulled the broken piece of her energy band from his pocket, snapped it into his own earpiece, and shouted, Aya, if you can hear me, I need a miracle. A long pause. Then, buy me 30 seconds. Eli charged. He ran straight at the red-helmeted hunter, dodging blasts, swinging a piece of pipe like a sword. The hunter laughed, blocking his strike, but didn't see the two Minari behind him attach a sticky moss bomb to his back. Boom. The man flew across the cavern, landing hard. Another hunter grabbed a Minari child. Before she could run, a mini drone, small and glowing, flew in and zapped her weapon, Aya's drone. She was awake. Back in the healing chamber, Aya stood shakily. guiding her micro-drones through the tunnels using a projection screen made from moss crystals. She whispered, "Don't let the core bleed." In the cavern, Eli tackled the last hunter, knocking his helmet off. They rolled across the stone floor, fists flying. Suddenly, the core flared bright red. A low roar filled the cavern. The Urium core had awakened. From its glowing body, long strands of energy spread out like roots, touching the walls, shaking the ground. A giant vine of living light wrapped around the remaining hunters, lifting them high. Holding them in place, they screamed. The chief bowed low. "It knows. It judges." The core pulsed once more, then silence. The hunters dropped to the floor alive, but unconscious. Their weapons melted into puddles of metal. The Urium core dimmed, its color returning to blue. The cavern exhaled. Later, I walked into the chamber, weak but standing. Eli turned and rushed to her, lifting her gently into his hand. "You did it," he said. "No," she whispered. "We did." Eli looked at the core. It was still watching. And now it knew Ellie's name too. The stars above Sector 14 looked peaceful again, but down below, in the heart of the moon, war had left its fingerprint-scorched walls, cracked tunnels, broken weapons, and exhausted faces. The Urium core now pulsed gently once more. Its anger had passed, but it remained watchful. The Minari elders had declared 3 days of silence to honor the sacred energy that saved them. Eli sat at the edge of the tunnel, staring at the sky above. Aya rested nearby, her eyes closed, recovering. He had washed her armor himself with soft cloth and warm moss water. Even though she was barely the size of his hand, she felt like the biggest part of his heart. But his peace didn't last long. A small device beeped in his pocket. A message, human signal. Somehow, a transmission had slipped through the EMP wreckage. He tapped it. A familiar voice crackled through. "Eli Ward, this is Commander Riller of Earth Command. You are being offered a full pardon, no rest, no charges. On one condition: return to base and bring the energy source with you. You have 48 hours. Ellie's hand trembled. A pardon. He could go back to Earth. Back to clean clothes, a warm bed, a paycheck, a real life. He looked at AYA. Then he looked at the message again. Your silence will be taken as rejection. Don't be a fool, Ward. That moon isn't worth your bones. Eli stared at the stars and whispered, "Is it worth my soul?" That night, he didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He just walked deep into the tunnels. Through the glowing moss pots and quiet stone bridges, his boots echoed softly. He passed sleeping Minari families. Some cuddled in flower leaves, others resting near fire crystals. They had no idea their protector was being pulled away. When he reached the Garden of Light, he stopped. Aya stood there, already waiting. She had known he would come. "You got the message," she said softly. He nodded. "They're giving me a way out." She didn't answer. "They said I can go back. No prison, no bounty. Just return and bring the Urium core." I looked away. Eli stepped closer. "You knew this would happen." "Yes," she whispered. "Your people don't give up what they want. They take it, even if it bleeds the galaxy dry." He sighed. "They're not all bad." She nodded. "Neither are we, but they will never see us." Silence filled the air. Finally, she looked up at him. "So what will you choose?" Eli sat beside her. "I wish it were simple." "It is," she said. "It's just hard." The next day, Eli climbed to the surface alone. He stood beside his old wrecked ship, patched with Minari vines and crystals. The red sun rose slowly. He sent a single reply to Earth Command. "You said I had to choose. I did. I'm staying." He turned off the signal. Behind him, I had climbed up to sit on his shoulder. "You really gave it up, everything." Eli smiled faintly. "They offered me a clean name. But here, I found a clean heart." I had touched his cheek with her tiny hand. "Then we will build a new name. Together." Back in the tunnels, a celebration began. The chief declared Eli as guardian of the core. Minari children painted his hands with glowing dust. Warriors sang the story of Tall Brother and his fire weapon. The Urium core sent soft blue lights across the cavern as if nodding in approval. But the biggest surprise came at the end of the ceremony. Aya stood on a carved stone, wearing a new cloak woven from moon silk and crystal thread. The chief raised his staff. "In our ways, to join and bond is not to own, but to protect. Aya has chosen this path, and Eli has chosen us. Today, they are united." I looked at Eli. "Do you accept this path?" Eli knelt down, his head lowered. "I already walk it. Later that night, the Minari built a new chamber for them, a quiet space lit with soft lights and warm springs. Aya stood on a platform at the center, her feet bare, her eyes full of light. Eli placed his hand beside her. "Are you sure about me?" She smiled. "You gave up your world for mine. What more could you give?" Eli looked into her eyes and answered, "Forever." And just like that, the man who had fallen from the sky, broken and lost, had now found something far greater than a pardon or paycheck. He had found a home. He had found love. And in the eyes of the smallest people in the galaxy, he had become the biggest of all. Years passed on Sector 14. But they were not counted the way Earth counted time. There were no clocks in the Minari world, no calendars, no digital schedules. They measured time by growth, by the number of blossoms on the crystal vines, by the deepening glow of the Urium core, by the laughs of new children born into safety, into peace, and at the heart of it all stood Eli Ward. Well, he didn't stand above any more. Now, he knelt with the people he once protected. Now, he worked beside them, but above all, he stood with her. His wife, his equal, his queen. The humans who once saw the moon as useless now sent ships often, but none landed. Word had spread. Something had changed there. Scouts who tried to approach never returned. Drones sent to spy were caught and returned gently, with notes carved in silver crystal. "Respect the small, or be shown how small you are." Eli had become a mystery. Earth Command whispered about him in secret meetings. He went native. He's building something out there. Why hasn't he aged? Why does he still have power with no tech? The truth, the Urium core had bonded with him, not as a master, but as a guardian. Eli had become more than human. Not physically strong and no glowing eyes, no magic powers, but his soul had deepened. His choices had carved something in the roots of the moon, and legends were growing. One day, in a galaxy far from Sector 14, a trader entered a bar on a desert planet. He told a story. "I saw it," he said, slamming his mug on the table. "I saw the giant with the crystal-armored queen. She sat on his shoulder like a crown." Another chimed in, "No way. They say she rides a white sky beetle and commands the winds." An old woman smiled. "Both are true, but more than that, he listens when she speaks. And that's what makes him royal." Back on Sector 14, the Minari had flourished. The once scattered families had become a city, a layered network of tunnels, like gardens, and energy bridges powered by the core. They called it Alliance, the city of the giant. I ruled as Queen of Light, using knowledge passed down from ancestors and tech. Eli helped upgrade with care. She taught diplomacy, science, and ethics to young Minari, but above all, she taught one rule: even the smallest voice can change the stars. And Eli, he built homes for creatures who had nowhere to go. Runaway AI pets, forgotten alien species, even retired bounty hunters who begged for peace. He built shelters, gardens, and bridges, not just of stone, but of trust. One evening, a signal reached Sector 14, a high-priority diplomatic envoy from Earth. They requested a meeting. In the past, they had been ignored. This time, Eli answered. Not with weapons, not with anger, but with invitation. A sleek, polished Earth vessel landed at the edge of the moon's surface. Out came 6 officials dressed in white, blinking at the strange beauty around them. They were expecting a cave or rubble. They saw light, soft, natural, living. They saw bridges made from glowing vines and cities carved into crystals. They saw children playing beside a pool of energy that pulsed gently with each laugh. Then they saw him, Eli Ward, tall and weathered, walking calmly across the bridge, wearing Minari robes and a hand-carved staff, and on his shoulder, Aya, wearing a gown of sky threads, her tiny crown shining like firefly light. One ambassador dropped his tablet. "You are still alive," he whispered. Eli smiled. Alive, and better. They tried to offer him Earth Command again, a high seat, a lab of his own, even a city on Mars. He only asked one thing: will you listen to them? They hesitated. Why step forward? Or will you only see our size? The officials looked around again, really looked, at the families, at the gardens, at the peace, and they bowed. For the first time, humans didn't see pests, they saw people. Back in Alliance, the people celebrated. That night, the stars were brighter. The Urium core sang gently. Beneath the surface. Mina or I artists carved a statue at the center of the city. It showed Eli standing tall, his hand open in peace, an eye on his shoulder, Pointing forward into the future dot at the base of the statue, they carved a simple line. He defended the smallest, and they made him the greatest. And so, the legend spread not of war, not of power, but of a human who saw value in life, even when others only saw size. And a queen so small, she could fit in his hand. But together, they carried the galaxy in their hearts.